especially the middle eight. And so, we're not writing the tunes in any particular idiom. So, in fact, in 5 years' time, we may arrange the tunes differently, but we probably write the same old rubbish.
Uncle Jack! Jackie boy!
Paul McCartney is a British musician, writer, producer, artist, and philanthropist. He is the winner of 18 Grammys, various awards and achievements recorded in the Guinness World Records, Knight's Bachelor, and a member of the Order of the British Empire. We could list his accomplishments for hours, but instead, in this video, you're going to learn the life story of one of the brightest stars of our time. Paul McCartney, how the legendary Beatle lives, and how he spends his billions. James Paul McCartney was born on June 18, 1942 in the Liverpool Maternity Hospital, where his mother, Mary, worked as a nurse. The father of the future star, Irishman James McCartney, had a passion for music in his youth, which eventually passed on to his sons, Paul and his younger brother, Mike. He even played trumpet and piano in a fairly well-known jazz band in Liverpool. During the post-war years, the McCartney family lived modestly. Mary worked as a visiting midwife, often leaving home day and night. The job still had its perks, as it allowed the McCartneys to secure a house in a decent neighborhood. As for James, he served at an arms factory during the war and later had a job at the Cotton Exchange, earning less than his wife, which troubled him greatly. The McCartneys were not religious, so the sons attended a public school rather than a Catholic one, as was more common at the time. Besides his studies, Paul was involved in music, which was actively encouraged by his father. From an early age, the boy played trumpet and piano quite skillfully. At the age of 10, the future Liverpool star made his debut at a school concert where he sang a song dedicated to the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II and got an award for the performance. A year later, he was transferred to the grammar school, the Liverpool Institute, where Paul studied until his graduation. In 1956, a tragedy struck the McCartney family. The boy's mother passed away from cancer. Paul struggled to cope with the loss and became introverted. He preferred spending time alone, climbing trees, and imagining himself as a British Army recruit. Trying to lift his son's spirits, James gave him a trumpet for his 14th birthday. Paul traded it for a guitar and immersed himself in study. Learning how to play the instrument, being left-handed, he had to restring the guitar to reverse the order of the strings. Initially, he copied songs and styles of idols at the time, including Elvis Presley and Little Richard, but eventually he started writing his own melodies. James rejoiced at Paul's progress and doubled his efforts, taking his sons to theaters, concerts, and exhibitions. During that period, Paul became captivated by the world of art. He even considered pursuing a career as a movie director, but didn't manage to complete the paperwork on time. During this period, the fateful meeting of Paul McCartney and John Lennon took place. John already had his own band performing English-style folk music. On July 6, 1957, Paul's friend Ivan Vaughan invited him to a performance by the Quarrymen in St. Peter's Church in Woolton. After the performance, Paul found himself in the company of Lennon. Everyone was in high spirits, and McCartney decided to showcase his guitar skills. John wasn't very good at playing guitar at the time, and he was amazed by Paul's performance. Over time, the two rapidly became close friends, although Paul's father was not very fond of Lennon, who had a reputation as a troublemaker. But the two boys had a lot in common, as John had also lost his mother at an early age. Initially, McCartney Sr. adamantly refused to let his son venture into the world of music on his own, but when he learned that Paul could earn money, he gave in. Thus, Paul joined the music band, and shortly afterward, he invited his friend George Harrison to join them. The band was complete, and after trying out a few other names, they settled on the Silver Beatles. By the 1960s, the band started performing at concerts, and after a performance in Hamburg, the adjective silver was dropped from the name, launching the triumphant march of the Beatles around the world. Despite Lennon being the unofficial leader of the group, it was McCartney who insisted on shortening the band's name. In Hamburg, the musicians worked on stage in 3 clubs. In total, they spent 800 hours there. The living conditions were horrendous. They lived in an abandoned cinema and used the cinema toilets to wash in. However, this experience became the springboard that helped the Beatles soar to the top. Upon their return from Germany in 1961, drummer Pete Best was replaced by Ringo Starr. Thus, the legendary Liverpool Four was complete. In October 1962, the band released their debut single, Love Me Do, and on February 11, 1963, their entire debut album, Please Please Me, was recorded in a London studio within just 12 hours.
Please, please, we won't die like I please you.
From the first recordings, it became clear that Paul was not only a talented songwriter, but also an excellent music producer who always had the final say. During this period, McCartney met sound engineer Jeff Emerick, with whom he would work hand in hand throughout his career. In the same year, Paul met another fascinating person, young actress Jane Asher. After a concert at the Royal Albert Hall, the photographers who prepared an interview with the Beatles asked the 17-year-old girl to take a photo with the musicians. It was enough to spark interest between Paul and Jane. They quickly became a couple and were dating for 5 years until 1967. During this period, Paul lived in the Asher's home and enjoyed the atmosphere of modest charm of the middle-class life. McCartney dedicated the songs And I Love Her, You Won't See Me, I'm Looking Through You, and Here, There, and Everywhere to his girlfriends.
Here, there, and everywhere.
In 1967, they moved to their own house on Cavendish Avenue and announced their engagement on Christmas Eve. However, in the middle of the following year, one day, the bride returned home a bit earlier and caught Paul in bed with American scriptwriter Francie Schwartz. She never set foot in McCartney's house again. The couple made a feeble attempt to reconcile, but it failed. According to their friends, it was not only about Paul's infidelity, but also constant quarrels, Jane's demands to quit work, and the artist's use of illicit substances. Paul never denied that it was part of his life, but always emphasized that, compared to other celebrities, he used them in moderation without slipping into a full-blown addiction. Meanwhile, the fame of the Beatles reached worldwide scale. The song She Loves You, released in 1963, became a hit single, setting several records in the British charts and gathering 26 million viewers who watched the group's performance at the TV show Royal Variety Performance. In November 1964, the Beatles released their second album, With the Beatles, featuring Paul's main work, the single All My Loving.
And I'll send all my loving to you.
This release was followed by tours across Europe and the USA, where the TV show featuring the band's performance attracted 73 million viewers. Upon their return to England, they quickly released the single Can't Buy Me Love. The soundtrack for the film A Hard Day's Night, in which all the band members starred.
Excuse me, but these young men I'm sitting with wondered if two of us could come over and join you. I'd actually myself, only I'm shy.
The movie box office exceeded the budget of $350,000 immensely. It grossed $14 million, a colossal sum for that time. Next, they presented the album with the same name, which was highly successful. And towards the end of 1964, the fourth studio album, Beatles for Sale, was released. In early 1965, Paul managed to take a brief break from Tunisia, concurrently writing the song Another Girl. In the summer, the band's second feature film, Help, hit the screens, and a few days later, the album of the same name was released. Undoubtedly, the heart of this album was the immortal single Yesterday, which was recorded by McCartney without other band members' help. There is a theory that they considered the song too soft and too much of a departure from the established energetic style of the Beatles.
Oh, I believe in yesterday.
In the summer, the band went on tour in the USA, where, after a phone call, Paul met his childhood idol, Elvis Presley. In the fall of the same year, the Beatles received Member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire medals. The ceremony took place at Buckingham Palace, and the awards were given by Queen Elizabeth II herself. In December 1965, the sixth studio album, Rubber Soul, was released. The album was recorded in just a month, and the rush was simply due to the managers wanting to release the album in time for the Christmas holidays. This circumstance did not affect the quality of the music. On the contrary, experts consider this album the first step to significant changes in the industry that led to the emergence of various rock music genres. At the same time, the Northern Songs record label, created specifically for the release of songs written by Lennon and McCartney, faced financial problems that required large sums of money. All members of the Beatles invested in country real estate and moved to Surrey, except for McCartney, who continued to live with his then-partner Jane and compose songs. In his free time, he explored galleries, exhibitions, and jazz clubs, gradually fitting into London's social scene. During this period, he met the owners of several art galleries who greatly influenced his artistic taste and immersed himself in the world of contemporary literature and poetry. McCartney also enjoyed experimenting with jazz and classical music, intricately intertwined with bold avant-garde. During that period, Paul met Andy Warhol, Michelangelo Antonioni, Peter Blake, and others. All of this not only influenced the poetic components of Paul's songs, but also contributed to his overall artistic and spiritual development. During the same period, McCartney took over Ringo Starr's former apartment and turned it into a creative laboratory. On August 5, 1966, the premiere of the seventh studio album, Revolver, took place, which caused not just admiration from the public, but something akin to a sacred ecstasy. The singles, For No One, Good Day Sunshine, and Yellow Submarine became the anthems of the 20th century.
We all live in a yellow submarine.
However, despite all this tremendous success, the gap between McCartney and the other band members became evident. Having given a concert in San Francisco in August 1966, the quartet decided to stop their live performances, after which McCartney focused on his solo work. During this period, he wrote the soundtrack for the film The Family Way. The following year, the album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles was released, which critics called outstanding, and listeners made it the most popular in the UK.
Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Almost immediately, the ninth album, Magical Mystery Tour, appeared, perhaps their most psychedelic work. Just take a look at the album cover. Essentially, it was the soundtrack for the band's TV film Magical Mystery Tour, but this time, the audience's reaction to the bizarre creation was rather lukewarm.
They can tell what he wants to do.
In May of the same year, Paul met photographer Linda Eastman, not yet realizing that he was looking at his future wife. They met again sometime later. In 6 months, they were married. Linda had a daughter from her first marriage, whom Paul adopted. In 1969, the couple had their daughter Mary. Surprisingly, their union turned out to be very strong. The spouses lived in harmony and hardly ever separated. In 1971, they had a daughter named Stella, and 6 years later, their son James joined the family. In 1968, the single Hey Jude was released, dedicated to John Lennon's son from his first marriage.
Hey Jude, don't make it bad.
The touching, profound song had unimaginable success, and interestingly enough, you can hear Paul uttering a swear word in his single. He played the chord incorrectly, and the band members wanted to re-record the song, but Lennon insisted that the mistake be simply drowned out. In November, the famous Beatles' White Album was released, featuring an entirely white cover. The music design and concept were so outstanding that the album was included in the Guinness Book of Records as the best-selling album of the 20th century. McCartney contributed his singles Blackbird, Helter Skelter to the album, as well as the lively Back in the USSR.
Back in the US, back in the US, back in the USSR.
At the beginning of 1969, the band released the soundtrack album for the animated film Yellow Submarine, while Paul initiated the filming of the movie Let It Be. He tried to rally his colleagues and convince them that they were up to the task, but during the preparation, the band began to fall apart. Lennon, Starr, and Harrison were tired of being in the shadow of Paul. The final chord in the band's life came with Lennon's suggestion to appoint his personal manager, Alan Klein, as the band's manager. McCartney adamantly rejected the idea, knowing from Mick Jagger that Klein was not trustworthy. The other Beatles decided to go against Paul's opinion and eventually fell victim to Klein's machinations. Nevertheless, on July 31, 1969, the Beatles released their new album, Abbey Road. It was extremely challenging for the musicians to work together. The mood in the studio was oppressive, and the former drive was nowhere to be found.
I'd like to be under the sea.
Interestingly enough, critics initially blasted the album, and only over time the experts found its charm. The photo on the album cover is also noteworthy, depicting the Liverpool Four walking across the zebra crossing on Abbey Road. This image became so popular that, at some point, the famous intersection was elevated to the status of a historical site, with web cameras installed there. Crowds of fans from around the world make pilgrimage to the crosswalk. The photographer who was lucky enough to capture the iconic photo was Ian McMillan, who had only 10 minutes for the photo shoot while a police officer blocked traffic. There were only 6 photos to choose from, and Paul was looking for the one where the Beatles walked in step. In 2014, all 6 photographs were auctioned off for almost $230,000. Meanwhile, Lennon launched his own project, and although no statements were made, it became clear that the Beatles were no more. In connection with this, the sound of the almost finished album, Let It Be, was reconsidered, which became the last in the history of the band.
Let it be, let it be.
Like in almost all late albums, Paul was the author of most of the singles. As the musician later admitted, he was deeply depressed at that time, abusing alcohol and illicit substances, and literally teetering on the edge of the abyss. One day, his mother, who had left him so early, appeared in his dream and warmly said, "Let it be." The musician decided to follow her advice and let go of the situation. These words also became part of the famous hit that brought McCartney an Oscar for Best Original Song. Then, Paul and his family moved to a secluded farm in Scotland where he spent some time healing his emotional wounds. This creative pause helped him gather strength and prepare material for his solo album, McCartney. The album instantly soared to the top of the charts, after which Paul began recording a second album with his wife Linda. Ram was warmly received by the public, and the songs Another Day and Uncle Albert broke records in the USA and the UK.
It's just another day.
Meanwhile, Lennon called the couple's work rubbish, which reached Paul. It turned out that McCartney was losing not only a colleague, but a friend as well. Rumors circulated that this process involved, among other things, Lennon's wife, Yoko Ono. In 1971, Paul, Linda, and musicians Denny Lane and Denny Sewell founded the rock band Wings, which performed for almost 10 years and had success. During that period, they released 7 albums. 2 of the albums topped the UK chart, and 4 of them did it in the USA. They also recorded the theme song for the James Bond film Live and Let Die, which was nominated for an Oscar. By the way, later Paul continued to create movie soundtracks and was nominated for major awards, for instance, for the score for the film Vanilla Sky. After finishing a world tour in 1977, McCartney was officially recognized as the highest-paid musician on the planet. The single Mull of Kintyre was topping the UK's main music chart for 9 weeks, having sold 2.5 million copies.
The Mull of Kintyre.
In 1980, after his band broke up, the musician released his second solo album, McCartney 2. Initially, critics did not appreciate it, but later this work became a cult classic. Over time, relations between Paul and John began to thaw slightly. They even performed together and expressed a desire to work together again. But soon, Paul received the news of Lennon's death. As the musician later admitted, their last conversation was about baking, and McCartney was happy to get back to the kind of communication they had in their youth. Lennon's death shocked the singer, and there was a rumor that he feared for his own life. By the way, during that period, he received anonymous threatening messages. To escape depression, McCartney immersed himself in the work on new songs. The album, Tug of War, included the single Here Today, dedicated to his friend, which is considered the best song in Paul's solo career.
Never understood a word, but you were always there.
He continued to record and release new albums, including Pipes of Peace, Press to Play, Flowers in the Dirt, and others. They received critical acclaim and sold well. McCartney always remained true to his impeccable taste and musical intuition. He increasingly used the themes of anti-war calls, altruism, and kindness in his singles. During that period, he also worked on the Beatles Anthology, a large, multifaceted project about the history of the legendary band. Simultaneously, he was actively performing, creating fascinating duets with Tina Turner, Elton John, and Michael Jackson. By the way, McCartney had a rather unpleasant story with the King of Pop. In secret from Paul, Jackson bought the rights to all songs by the Beatles for $50 million. The victimized star had to go through numerous legal battles before the legacy returned to him. Naturally, there was no friendship between Jackson and McCartney anymore. In March 1997, Paul was knighted for his contribution to the development of music, becoming Sir Paul McCartney. He dedicated his award to Lennon, Harrison, Starr, and all Liverpudlians. In 1998, a tragedy struck the McCartney family as Paul's beloved wife, Linda, died of cancer. As always, music helped him overcome his grief. He recorded the cover album Run Devil Run, returning to his roots and the music he loved in his teenage years. After that, the musician was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. During the same period, Paul met his new partner, former English model Heather Mills. In the summer of 2002, the couple married in Iceland. In 2003, their daughter Beatrice was born, and 3 years later, the spouses divorced. Following long legal battles, Paul paid nearly $30 million to the woman. This relationship resulted in the album Driving Rain, dedicated to Heather. Interestingly enough, during the divorce process, the artist managed to release another album, Memory Almost Full, the title of which is an anagram of For My Soulmate LLM, the letters being the initials of Linda. Paul claims it to be a coincidence, but a rather mystical one.
My ever-present past.
Meanwhile, in November 2007, he met American businesswoman Nancy Shevell, whom he married in 2011. The couple spends a lot of time together and looks very happy. Paul McCartney is not only a caring father of many children, but also a wonderful grandfather. As of today, the famous Beatle has 8 grandchildren. In 2012, Paul triumphantly performed at the opening ceremony of the Summer Olympics in London, singing his most famous single, Hey Jude. At the same time, he released another cover album for the first time in a long while, and in 2013, the original album, New. It reached the 3rd position on the main charts in the UK and the USA. While working on it, Paul deliberately sought younger producers to refresh the sound. His next musical works, Egypt Station and McCartney 3, were released in 2018 and 2020, respectively. A little earlier, he appeared in the film Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Men Tell No Tales.
Did I ever tell you the one about the skeleton?
Yes, you have many times.
Skeleton goes into a bar, orders a beer and a mop. Funny as ever.
Paul's art is not limited to music and movies. For example, since the 1980s, he has been involved in the creation of animated films. During the same period, he began to explore the basics of painting. Since then, his personal exhibitions have taken place in many cities. McCartney also has a literary talent. In 2005, his fairy tale novel, High in the Clouds, was published, followed by another children's book, Hey Granddude, in 2019, and its sequel, Granddude's Green Submarine, in 2022. Throughout his career, Paul has collaborated with various brands, including Apple and the American investment company Fidelity. He didn't neglect social work, appearing in a video in support of the vegetarian project Meat Free Monday. Since the 1990s, the musician has been involved in the activities of the brand Linda McCartney Foods, appearing in their ads. Paul McCartney is a big fan of classic and retro cars. He owned a luxurious and very expensive 1964 Aston Martin DB5, which he drove until 1970. Afterward, the car stayed in the garage until it was bought for $1.34 million by Chris Evans only in 2017. In 1965, unique Mini Coopers were ordered for all members of the Beatles, taking into account each of their wishes. McCartney ordered a green Cooper with a sunroof and a powerful engine. The star also owned such treasures as the Lamborghini 400 GT and Rolls-Royce Corniche, as well as the classic Land Rover, which Paul and Linda called Hell on Wheels. Currently, there are 2 cars in Sir Paul McCartney's garage that are dear to his heart: a 2003 Chevrolet Corvette and a hybrid Lexus LS600H, a gift from the brand on his 65th birthday. The star's real estate portfolio also looks impressive, estimated at around $100 million. The first on the list is a New York townhouse, which the singer purchased for $1.9 million in 1984. 14 years later, McCartney bought a house in prestigious East Hampton for $500,000. In 2001, Paul bought a mansion in Beverly Hills worth $4 million from Courtney Love as a wedding gift for Heather Mills. This house became the subject of heated disputes during the divorce process. Paul did not want to part with it, as it was the place where his friend and fellow Beatle George Harrison passed away after a prolonged illness. The 1.3-acre plot featured a large main house, a guest house, a pool, a tennis court, a bowling alley, and a luxurious bar. The main house was designed in a neo-colonial style with an abundance of decor elements made of expensive redwood and light textiles. In 2005, Paul and his wife Nancy acquired a penthouse in New York for $15.5 million. The 60s-inspired spacious apartment is located on Manhattan's Museum Mile and resembles a private gallery with numerous works of art, abundant gold decor, and mirrors. The property includes a bright dining room with marble floors, 4 bedrooms, a spacious living room with a huge white sofa, a library with a bar, and a luxurious terrace overlooking Central Park. However, the McCartney family rarely visited the penthouse, and eventually they decided to sell it in 2022 for only $8.5 million. Additionally, McCartney owns a 190-acre ranch in Arizona, which he bought in 1979 because his first wife, Linda, loved the rocky and desert land of Tucson. The family spent spring and fall vacations there, away from the hustle and bustle. Here, Linda passed away in 1998, and her ashes were scattered at the ranch. Currently, Paul rarely visits this place, although he has no intention of selling it. Paul also has property in England. The house he bought in London in 1965 is literally steps away from the famous Abbey Road studios. It cost him $50,000 at the time, and today, real estate agents estimate the property to be worth $20 million. The classic English mansion is full of memories, photographs, and musical instruments. In 2020, there were reports that the house was put up for sale, but there was no update if the deal was finalized. In addition, the artist has vast green estates and farms in East Sussex and Scotland. As of today, Paul McCartney is one of the wealthiest musicians on the planet with a fortune of $1.5 billion. He earns about $70 million annually from various sources, including the Beatles' song royalties, album sales, and his brand sales. He owns the most expensive Beatles catalog, consisting of 251 songs valued at $1 billion, as well as the rights to the music of songwriters and singers Buddy Holly and Carl Perkins. Among the Liverpool Four, Paul turned out to be the most successful in financial matters. He could have comfortably rested on the laurels of the band's tremendous success, but he chose a different path. After the Beatles disbanded, he recorded and released 26 more studio albums. Despite his immense success, Paul maintains a healthy attitude towards money. He believes that money is a pleasant tool that allows him to calmly say to his friends and family, "Don't worry, I'll help." His kindness and compassion also drive the legendary musician to engage in charity activities. He gained widespread recognition as an animal rights advocate. Paul is a vegetarian and encourages the public to stop wearing natural fur. He has also called for a ban on anti-personnel mines. McCartney doesn't ignore the war in Ukraine either, expressing his sincere support for the country. During concerts as part of the summer tour in 2022, he played a guitar specially made for him in the colors of the Ukrainian flag. Later, it was sold at a charity auction for $77,000. Paul McCartney is a phenomenon, a unique and talented individual. He continues to tour and break records. In 2022, he became the oldest headliner of the Glastonbury Festival. This year, the musician announced the release of a new and final song by the Beatles, recorded with the help of artificial intelligence. For many of us, the songs of the Beatles are associated with the most crucial events in life. People from all over the world mourned and rejoiced, fell in love, and parted ways listening to their singles. What memories does their music evoke for you?
If you like the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything interesting.